have France v Fiji. The rematch is what I'm thinking of it, because the last time this happened, Fiji came away with the spoils.
They did.
It was an awesome contest, that game, and it was
one of my favourite games of rugby. Perhaps certainly one of my favourite ever autumn games of rugby. In terms of the autumn series.
Like we were saying before this happened, that a lot of them are dead rubbers, a lot of them are like just not stellar. Like the argument is they're friendly games. That one wasn't a friendly game. That was a proper test match, and it was great to see Fiji win it. And this one will be happening at 3:15. That's British time here, at 4:15 local time, in the Stade de la Rabine in Vannes, which is an unusual spot for a French game. But I'm not opposed to this. I like moving it around.
I definitely like moving it around. Again, the no fans thing is a bit of a shame.
Yes.
Matthew Carley's in charge. What's interesting about Vannes, what a nice idea. It's not in the south of France. It's along it's near the Atlantic, along the west coast, and as such. We're actually set for some bad weather. According to, if the forecasts are to be believed, it's going to be a wet and windy day. Temperatures around 16 Celsius, but one of those, you want to say it's a little bit November. That's quite a lot November.
Yes, indeed. That's 16 wind and the rain at Atlantic breeze. That might be a bit chilly for some of those Fijian lads, but it'll be chilly for some of those French lads.
It's not especially chilly, 16 degrees.
No, but with the wind, it is.
It's a warm wind, isn't it? It's a warm, stormy breeze. Like I don't think they'll be cold, but it's definitely not a game that lends itself to shootout.
Your basketball Fijian style flair that you would normally like to see.
It's not something they would be unusual with seeing. If you look at Fiji domestic rugby, they get absolute showers and wind and the like.
They're in there,
island in the middle of the ocean.
This is true. Yeah, so they will not be averse to it. It's just in terms of the stylistic style, the purists that we are looking for good rugby, and whenever Fiji take the field, getting excited at the prospect of all these flashy offloads. It's probably not going to be a spectacle like that. But what I would say as a point of optimism for Fiji, the last time they won, it wasn't built on their rambunctious offence, although Radradra scored a lovely try and they did attack well, but it was defence was where they won that game in France last time, and hopefully 100%. They'll bring some of that steadfastness in defence, and that's one of the most notable improvements, and it's actually one of the areas where they're starting to distance themselves from other Tier 2 teams in terms of competence, and I hope we don't see them regress in that. I hope we will see a cohesive Fiji team that are there for the fight.
Absolutely. We are going to take a look at it from the perspective of both sides. We're going to start with France, the home side, who are just coming off a powerful win over Ireland.
Yes.
And to your point, they're not underestimating this. I saw an interview with Boutier, the fullback, who was talking about, the last game they played Fiji, and the other thing for this French team is that the rules with the LNR mean that if these guys are to play, if the main team are to play as we suspect this weekend,
they will be unavailable.
They will all be unavailable going into the last 3 weeks, and it'll be a brand new French team. And I guess it kind of makes sense to have, to put a full stop on this team, have the first 3 weeks one team, second 3 weeks another team,
I think that's
rather than disjoint the whole thing.
That makes much more sense. I actually think with this, between that decision that they've kept the same squad, obviously from the Six Nations, and the fact that they're talking so bullishly, they were talking bullishly about avenging their home losses against Ireland, which they did. Now this one is also fresh in the memory. They're targeting this. I just think with the World Cup, I'm so glad of it, because for the last 10 years I have been weeping for French rugby. I love the way they play the game. I love their attacking verve, and they just seem to lose that entirely for a decade. But they got the World Cup, much to our chagrin. Our bid was outbid, it's going to be France 2023, and nothing will focus their minds quite like that, as far as a World Cup cycle, which they very often ignore. They won't be sending a touring party over to New Zealand to get hammered 3 weeks in a row and not really be caring that much. I don't think we're going to see that in this 4-year cycle at all. I think we're seeing a France side that is more focused on building towards a World Cup that they're hosting with a mind towards winning. And that's exactly what we're seeing, because we've always known they've had the talent, and sure, with the LNR forcing their hand, we're going to see 2 whole squads worth of French talent over the next few weeks, which is exciting enough in its own right. But it's a breath of fresh air, and certainly it started with Toulouse over the last few seasons, and it's kind of built into this French team, bled into this French team, that they've rediscovered what they're about. They know how to counter-attack again. They know how to flood small channels with loads of numbers and get their hands free and get attack space with tempo. They have a half-back in Dupont, who is one of the best in the world. It's exciting times for France, to be honest. I'm really, as much as I was bummed out watching them beat us last week, I was also kind of glad to see them execute some of those tries the way they did.
Yeah, absolutely. They're certainly looking crisp and brilliant, and like that old school team of the aughts where they were just an electrifying attacking force.
Yeah.
With some quality up front as well. As you say, this is the last game for a lot of these guys prior to going back to their clubs, and certainly after the great win against Ireland and wins against Wales. This would be another one to put to bed, that last result against Fiji, and just go off happy as opposed to deeply frustrated, which they would if they slipped up and lost this game.
Indeed, yeah. So there's definitely stakes.
There's definitely stakes. It's always a dangerous game when you're playing Fiji.
Oh, yeah, no, you can't sleep on Fiji.
It's not just you can't sleep on. Like, we don't know what they're going to look like, except that they are familiar with them in the context of the top coutures. They're familiar with these individuals and how powerful and how great they can be in the open field. They're also familiar with Vern Cotter as like
one of the great brains
made his name in French rugby in Clermont, but also has moved on, has done a great job with Scotland, reinvigorated that team, has a great track record. Him coming in is as good a coach as they've managed to import and get hired perhaps ever.
Yes, I'd say so.
So yeah, a Vern Cotter Fiji team coming to town, them knowing the terrain so well, is a danger from a French perspective, and they'll have to be tight. And there were times in that Ireland game, as good as France looked going forward, there were times when I, as an Ireland fan, was thinking, God, we could get at them.
Yeah.
And I wasn't just romance. Like, they were softening out of some tackles. Yeah. They were giving away some penalties stupidly.
Yes, still true.
And they were playing us into the 22 and letting us set up some attacks. And we managed to, like a couple of times, France had the game put to bed and let us back in.
Yes.
And nearly let us win the game.
Yes.
And that's definitely an area that they're going to have to tighten up on. Discipline, tackling, defence, getting on top of these Fijians and making them make the errors.
Yes.
That's vital, because they, at times at their worst, they could be a bit soft.
Yes.
And that's something that Fiji could exploit.
Checked out. They can switch off at times, which is definitely a bad sign in any team. And against Fiji, Fiji are a more dangerous side than Ireland in terms of trying to execute when you're standing off them on defence.
Yeah.
Their instincts are to attack the space all the time and to offload, and they've freshly captained Semi Radradra, so it's like, you know what they're going to be about. They're going to be looking to try and attack space regardless of the weather, and looking to try and get their hands free into contact and pick apart what is, as you say, a suspect defence. Although the likes of Bernard Leroux has really stepped up for them this year. I remember last year not being convinced at all of his credentials in the second row, whereas now I'm pretty confident he's their best option at second row. He's been brilliant for them. And then similarly, Aldrit and Olivon have been good, assured guys in there. Have kind of the culture of the
I think Villemse has stepped up massively as well. He's super physical influence. But and then as you say, the backline, Dupont and Ntamak pulling the strings.
Vakatawa also a distributing force. Him v Radradra, if that's what it is, in the 13 shirt, that would be such a box office game.
That is an incredible matchup. That's just a superb matchup for Test rugby and for this game. In terms of just the game itself, obviously it's a full stop for this team. So looking at it defensively, like, that's the real area that they're going to have to step up. I think swallowing up Fijian ball, owning those contacts, capitalising on the disruption, and then striking off turnover.
Fact that it's wet to go target the ball in the contact, as we were always talking about. Like, they don't actually have out and out poachmen on the pitch, especially with Marchand starting. That shot comes off and he is a legit threat, but that's not really where most of their guys' game is about. But you can still generate turnovers by just dislodging the pill in contact, and the Fijians will be holding the ball loosely, looking for the offload. So if you can manage to dislodge that, they will break off turnover. And you saw with Dupont, Ntamak, Vakatawa, all these guys are very, very well adept at transitioning into counter-attack.
Yeah, exactly. Transition is crucial, but just defensive disruption that leads to either turnover ball or lineouts in your favour or scrums in your favour. Like, you can march your way up the field, and they don't need to force anything, I don't think, because Fiji are going to be the team that's more disjointed. They haven't played any rugby together themselves. France need to manage their way through the team, contain what Fiji have, own the game up front a little bit, get on top of those collisions, and then move it wide.
Scrumming for penalties might be an option here 100%. As well, because they have a legit scrum. Their front row is danger, and their front row replacements are danger as well. And just the likes of Camille Chat off the bench, that Marchand Chat dynamic at hooker is one of the best in the world. And as a scrummaging force, they are certainly more than Fiji. And if they can target the pill, create those turnovers or just turfed balls that create that set piece and then scrum for penalties. They can slowly exert that dominance, and control would be lovely to see from them in a game.
Yeah, exactly. And control and focus, like those are the two things that you might cast aspersions on. We know the attacking flair is there, and we know when the chance is there they can take it, and that's something that they're obviously going to want to build on and want to do, and flooding the right channels and moving it wide at the right times and exposing at times Radradra's over aggressiveness on defence, and getting the ball over him,
or just a disjointedness in general. If Fiji are that way, they'll be looking to capitalise on it.
But that said, what happened the last time was that Fiji got up in their faces, made all the tackles, didn't stop, and France ended up getting frustrated and panicking.
Yes.
And this time they need not to panic.
They need to try and reverse that.
Yeah, they need to exert the control themselves, and if Fiji are stepping up to the task, they don't need to panic. Dupont can pin the corners, Ntamak, they can move them around, they can move the point of attack. Boutier, if need be, can kick the ball 60 metres down a field.
Yes, he can.
If you're ever in danger.
Yeah.
So they just need to be smart, play in the right areas of the pitch, not force anything, defend well and maintain focus, and then the chances will come. They're a very good team. They just need to build those elements of control, and they should have enough now to see off this Fiji team.
You would think so. And speaking of this Fiji team, they're obviously in a similar regard to Georgia. Their preparation has been disrupted quite comprehensively by COVID breaking out in the camp, so that has prohibited some players from being available for selection. We don't actually know who yet. We haven't actually got that info.
Yes, but data protection rules dictated be so, and that's fine.
That is fine. I don't want to go naming people if it's going to be a black mark. But we do know that Radradra's been named captain. We know that they had to cancel a game against Portugal, which was going to be a pretty vital hit out, similar to what we were saying about Georgia. They're going to be coming in pretty undercooked and pretty cold.
Except, like, a lot of some of
these guys were meant to be in the Barbarian squad as well, so they've had 2 cancelled warm up games.
There is truth to that, but the vital difference between Fiji and Georgia is that COVID didn't shut everything down domestically. No. They've had a full domestic season, and Vern Cotter's brought a lot of young guys. And then also a lot of guys are playing in Europe. And so this is a squad of experienced players who are playing, who have got some matches under their belt in Europe, coming together with some guys who've played a domestic season in Fiji, and they're melding a squad together. So I actually think the issues are going to be less about rustiness and less about not being able to get to the physical pitch, and more just about, are they in sync? Are they clicking as a
cohesion
team?
And then some tactics and just some being on the same wavelength and being up to the pitch of things, because France have had 2 tough tests now against Wales and against Ireland to get themselves really in a good kind of frame of mind about what they're trying to do and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and just a knowledge of and a trust of the player next to you. Which Fiji definitely had going into the last World Cup and showed shades of it during the World Cup, but we haven't really seen a lot of these guys together on the same pitch since then in a competitive instance. So
I can tell you on paper, some of the names blow your heads off. I mean, the 2 wingers listed in the squad back in October, Nemani Nandolo and Jos Tuisova, we haven't seen them play together in a while. It's great to see Nandolo back.
Yes.
Him coming in there, combining with the likes of Bhatia and Radradra.
Bhatia and Radradra is a great centre pairing.
Yeah, on the face of it, that backline's extraordinary. Yeah. And it's physical.
Murray Valu, Ben Volavola. Yeah. One of Lamani or Matawalu or Kurivoli at halfback.
I'd say it'll be Lamani.
It's usually Lamani.
But Lamani and Volavola at halfback, they're the controlling element, and Volavola's boot's going to be crucial in terms of moving France back, especially if it's wet. But there's no reason at all why they shouldn't think they could be to the physical match of these French teams.
Or attack them.
Bhatia, run at Ntamak.
Yes.
Hit that guy.
Yes.
With ball in hand.
Is a tank.
Exactly. And Radradra likewise. They definitely have the scope to at least disrupt the French defence and get on top of them. Yeah. And even without the classy offloading game that we know they have, that we know they can bring, and going around the corner and having instincts for the open space, which they're going to bring, just edging contacts is going to be vital here. Yeah. And it's not undoable against France. We saw Scotland do it. We saw Scotland disrupt them. And Fiji are big and strong.
They are big and strong. We know that they aren't shy of contact at all. And looking at some of their back row options, some of these guys are really big and strong. Some of their second row options, you have the likes of Nakarawa and Ratuva in there, who are no strangers to top tier rugby. As far as physicality, I think they're in there for the combat of the game. I think set pieces where they will struggle, and it is traditionally so. They will struggle to be cohesive in the scrum and to deal with what is quite a monstrous French scrum. When they all get it cohesive, they can be very, very dangerous.
The solution is not to have the game be about that.
Exactly.
Protect the ball when you have it. Yeah. Definitely don't run away from your instincts, but don't throw panic offloads. No. Offload on your own terms when you're picking good lines, when you're working to the open field, when you're on top of the contact.
Yeah.
But mind the pill outside of that, and I think the kicking game of Vulla Vulla is going to be vital.
Yes, the kicking game of Vulla Vulla, because I've seen them on occasion revert to a box kick, and I think to a man, like be it Lomani, be it Madawalu, none of them can do it. They're really bad at the skill. They're actually among the worst box kicking scrum halves in the world. So just don't make them do it.
No, of course.
Like just don't do it.
Absolutely not.
Like you have Ben Vulla Vulla there.
Vulla Vulla's kicking game is actually, like, you compare them to a lot of the tier 2 10s, there's no contest. Like we're pulling our hair out talking about Georgia and Italy and their inability to do anything other than bombs in the sky. Vulla Vulla, credit to him, he's not that guy.
No, he has quite
can
a
pin
varied,
the corners, he can move the ball around, absolutely, and he's a decent passer.
And he's actually he was kind of a breath of fresh air in that regard, because a lot of the times Fiji's backline would consist of like all centres or all wingers, and including the 10, and like that has been the case a lot of the time. Ben Vulla Vulla is an out and out 10. Like he that's exactly what he is. He has a lovely varied kicking game, nice balanced running game, good distribution game. So if they'll be looking like the parts are all there, as is always the case with, to be honest, with both of these teams, France and Fiji, an embarrassment of riches a lot of the time in terms of the calibre of their players. Fiji are just lacking a little bit for preparation time, and we'll be wondering to see how to the pitch they are. But it would be
if
nice
they can
to see
be
them
physical on both sides of the ball, physical and disciplined, and those are the things I'm looking at. Discipline in offense, meaning no loose rucking, no stupid offloads when you're on the back foot. Just be mindful of the ball, and then when the chance is there, take it and strike and use all those offensive chops and get to Isovas and Nolos and Ranradras on the ball in space, because by God they can torture you, and they could torture this French team. Absolutely, even in the wet. But minding the pill, and then being disciplined on defence means getting out, getting into the faces, shutting down the space Ntomac has to work with, Botia, big hits, but bending your body, wrapping your arms,
a red card
tackling.
is curtains.
Exactly.
It's not an unlikely thing to have happen. A rusty, slightly sloppy tackle technique from a Fijian, game over.
So that's what I mean about discipline. Just winding yourself in that little bit where you're restrained enough that you're not making stupid mistakes. Not being reckless, but at the same time be your physical brilliant selves, because you have the talent to absolutely run this French team close, 100%.
Close, if not over the line. And it would just to go with all of that, I would just say do everything with purpose. Like be purposeful with the ball and without the ball. Don't be a bit like wishy-washy, because we saw it in the World Cup against Uruguay in the game that they famously lost, where they were doing things for the sake of doing things and not being direct and purposeful, and they were getting loose and they were forcing things then. And then it was the more disciplined side were Uruguay, and they took it from them. Like they need to couple that discipline with just a clear sense of purpose about what they're doing with and without the ball, and that'll be good enough for a really good showing and a good performance, and could be good enough to get them in the contest. I definitely rate Fiji as a team that can compete with any team.
You talk about them as a tier 2 team, and you kind of dismissively say, France should be able to win, and then you look at the team and they go, holy crap, like the talent is incredible. A tier 2 team? The talent is incredible. So they absolutely have scope to compete.
It's always the case that each of those guys plays professional rugby in a club in Europe or wherever else, but not only do they play professional rugby, but they are like
the star.
A star and like an absolute icon in the team, a fulcrum in whatever team they are, be it Tuasova, be it Radradra, be it whoever.
Yeah, it's almost like there's stars everywhere and there's no one to do the grunt work sometimes. There's a little bit imbalance occasionally. Like you've got too many stars and not enough workmen, and sometimes it's a bit like that. But
it's our game of the weekend in terms of the fixture list. I think it is.
Like if you're thinking Ireland-Wales is the game of the weekend, it's not. I'm an Ireland fan, I can tell you it's not. This is the definite spectacle of the weekend.
Yeah, and with that, what do you think's going to happen?
It's impossible, isn't it? Like you talk about the prediction thing. Like, how can we possibly know what Fiji are going to look like? I just think it's crazy to ask me. Like, I think they'll both be playing some rugby out there.
Yes,
and that's what's going to happen. Like, it's very, very hard to say what kind of Fiji is going to turn up and what kind of France is going to turn up. My suspicion is that France are wary of Fiji, and that they're targeting the game and they're going to be focused. And then my instinct says that actually isn't going to be enough to put it to bed, and that Fiji are going to show up as well, and then we'll have a humdinger of a game like that. I maybe that's the optimist in me talking, but I don't think that France showing up and being focused is going to be enough to put this Fiji team to bed. I certainly hope not.
No.
I think Fiji will be physical. I think they'll be there. I think they have tries in them. I think they have physicality in them. I think that the tight five in France will see them over the line. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say like 22-16 to France. They're not going to get it all their own way. It's a bit of a wet weather game. It's going to be a one-score game.
Okay,
for France.
Good call.
That's what I'll say.
I hope so. I hope it's a one-score game either way, and I hope Fiji are up to the blow. My fear with it is just looking at the years that it is, such as it is. It's obviously everyone's affected by COVID, and everyone's
Fiji less than anybody.
Although
the squad has it, I guess.
Yeah, no, the squad has it.
This is all with the caveat that maybe they'll rock up to when they're announcing the team and say, actually, like 15 lads have COVID, and this is all we can field, or we can't field anything.
Exactly. And I've just looking at it's been incremental for every team getting back in. We saw in the first few weeks of Super Rugby Unlocked a bit of a lackluster show.
These guys have been playing though.
I know they've been playing. But what I'm saying is just the teams being rusty. I've seen it in the Pro 14. I've seen it even in the Six Nations. Even Super Saturday was played to a more like I'm worried for Fiji as far as that cohesiveness, and I fear France are targeting this enough that they may do them dirty.
Not having it.
No, I'm gonna say that it's gonna be a 10-point win for France.
That's okay.
I'm gonna slightly more.
You were building up to a dangerous.
I'm gonna push it out. No, because I think the wet weather will keep the score down a little. Yeah. But I think France will have too much, and I hope Fiji are, as you say, to the blow, but I fear they might be a little disjointed.
I think they'll be there.
With Vern Cotter pulling the strings, getting them ready.
I think Vern Cotter's had these boys in camp and has been getting them ready.
Hope so.
100%.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for watching that video. If you're new here, please like and subscribe for more content, and leave a comment down below as well, because we really enjoy the chat and hearing your views. Thank you.